Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. Let's talk commission painting. What's it like? Is it worth it? Can you earn a living?
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems, and offer custom items to suit your club, your event, or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
For those of you that don't know, Miniature Realms started life as a commission painting business and still is. And it's about as old as my eldest child, so 10, 11 years old. It might have predated him a little bit, I can't remember. It's one of those jobs that so many people slowly glide into rather than make definitive choices. This is going to be it from now on. For me, like many others, it started as a side hustle. In fact, I already had a side hustle that it was born from. I used to run a very small business called Terrain Geek, where I used to make resin bases and small pieces of resin terrain, some of which I pre-painted. I sold a few paints and things as well. Had a very tiny web store. Earned me pennies, not much at all, but enough to spend some hobby money that I may have not otherwise had. And I enjoyed doing it. It was very much a fun thing being part of a community, a wargaming community, aside from just playing games and painting miniatures. As we were gearing up towards our first child, that became a little bit more work than it needed to be in terms of packing orders, but more importantly, casting lots of resin. It was a pain, it was messy, and in terms of the returns I got from it, it wasn't brilliant. So I decided to simplify things a little bit and just started to do a few more regular painting jobs for people. I was an okay painter. I painted some of the terrain, so I also had customers waiting there for me, and it was just an easy thing to slowly shift into. So I changed the name to something that reflected what I was going to be doing a little bit better, but very much planned just to keep it as a side hustle. By this point, my wife was heavily pregnant. We knew our child was on the way. It's all planned, and we knew there was going to be some changes. We just hadn't fully mapped out what they were going to be. I won't bore you with what our jobs were, but we both worked for two fairly large corporate style businesses in the UK that meant that we needed to be around during retail and restaurant hours, and that required a bit of travelling for both of us. And then about 6 months into my wife's maternity, after our first child was born, she was offered a promotion, a very good promotion, one that she didn't want to turn down. So I took some time off as additional paternity leave, something you can do in the UK. Basically take the rest of your wife's maternity leave to look after our firstborn, and it was great. I enjoyed being off work. It made me realise even more that I didn't want to do the job that I was doing. That situation also made us realise that we weren't going to be able to balance our existing jobs with looking after a child, and one of us had to make a change. My wife had just got a promotion, so it wasn't going to be her, and I was more than happy to do that. And I had enough opportunities for work, for commission painting coming in, that I could do it as a side hustle, work part-time, doing a bit of commission painting while being the primary stay-at-home dad. So why am I telling you all this boring real life stuff for more than a decade ago? Partly because I think it sets up something quite realistic about commission painting if you're looking at starting your own commission painting business. You won't be able to earn a full-time salary straight off the bat. It will take a while to build up clients, and there are a lot of other complications which I'll come on to as part of this video. So unless you're going to work for an existing business, a commission painting business, or are able to offer you full-time hours, and there aren't many of those around, and you're considering doing this, you kind of need to be in a situation where it benefits you and your life, I suppose, is the best way of looking at it. And to hammer that home, that really is the first piece of advice I will give you. Unless you're walking into a full-time painting position at another company, make sure that you're financially stable enough in order to support yourself while you'll build your business up. And you may not get to the point, so give yourself enough time and enough buffer so that it doesn't collapse on itself. It does take time. So how do you find work? How do you advertise? I'm in a very fortunate situation where I haven't really advertised for years. I mean, a very, very long time. I tend to be booked up far enough in advance that I won't advertise, because it'll just create bookings that are too far in advance, and I don't like to book all that far in advance because sometimes people change their minds, and I also don't want to be in a situation where my circumstances change and I have to let people down. I would hope and imagine that if you are thinking of becoming a commission painter, that you already have a body of work and you're an experienced enough painter in the first place, and that people would be familiar with your work. So you'll be part of the community, be that a gaming or a painting community, maybe with social media, Instagram, those kind of things, and you're sharing your work already. So if you suddenly say, I'm doing commissions, people are going to go, oh yes, I like your work, I've seen it before, I would like to employ you. And if your work is good enough, people will come to you. There's always enough clients out there looking for work to be done if the standard you offer is right and it matches the price expectations that they have. Another way of finding work is to get in contact with some of the bigger companies out there that offer painting services. Now, I've never worked with any of them directly myself. I work for myself, I wouldn't do that, but there are companies out there that subcontract or have employed painters, and that might be another route into it where they find all the work for you. The biggest question is always, what do you charge? And that's quite a big question, so I'm going to get there eventually, but first of all we'll start with standard, and whether you're going to offer multiple different standards, whether you're going to advertise set prices for those standards, or whether you're going to treat everything in more of a bespoke manner. Much of that may depend on your own abilities and what you're comfortable with achieving. Some painters will be able to paint to a wide range of different levels and will offer those different levels. Some people will have a best standard, or they're very much an army painter only, and there's room for all of those kind of painters in the market. There are lots of different clients that have different budgets and will be looking for different things, but you need to be honest with yourself what you're able to achieve and whether you can afford to offer that for the amount of money that you're going to receive for it. I started by advertising some different set standards with starting from prices as guides, and I've slowly moved away from that. Over the years, it was always too confusing, and people would ask for things on a sliding scale, and their expectations would always be different. And sometimes a really high standard finish on a particular miniature might take you less time than something that's not as high standard, but it's just a harder miniature to paint or a harder colour to paint. And it all became a bit of a mess for me, so I decided just to treat each job as a bespoke job and talk to the client about it and find out what they wanted, what their expectations were, and get them to share with you pictures of things they like and what they've seen. And if you talk to them well enough and you can communicate with your client, then generally you'll know where they're coming from. And that communication really is the key. If you know what they want and you know what you've got to deliver and you've agreed on a price and you deliver it, you shouldn't have too many issues. But you really have to do what works best for you. And I suppose tangentially there you will come up against comparisons with other painters, and sometimes you will give a price to a client or prospective client and they will come back to you and will say, well, X will do it for Y price, and you have to be able to remain strong and stick to your guns if you believe your prices are right. And there's a real mix out there. There are studios overseas that can offer things very, very cheaply, and also the old school style painting services versus commission painters, and it's very much an apples or oranges thing there. I appreciate you can go down to the weeds on this, but I think there is a little bit of a difference sometimes between some commission painters and services of what they offer, which is very bespoke, and a painting service which is always one standard, quite often just army painting, one colour, wash, bang, done. And it can be a very, very different thing, and the expectation is very different. And if a client just wants their miniatures painted quickly because they just want to get them on the table, then they may be looking for a cheaper service. And if you are looking to do something a little bit better, a little bit more artistic, and that's the business you're doing, but maybe they're not the right client for you as well, and that client to painter match is really, really important. And an alarm bell always goes for me if I speak to a prospective client who says, well, my friend at the club will paint them for £2.50 per miniature or something like that. That's fine. If they've got a friend who will do that, they're better off going to that kind of painter, because it is a totally different thing. Someone doing it in their spare time for a little bit of extra pocket money, and someone doing it full time as a business. And if you're going to do this as business, you've got to treat it as a business. Let's talk about time. In my experience, not just through commission painting, but for all things in life, Everything takes longer than you think it will when you set out to do it. Whether it's cleaning the oven, whether it's taking your kids somewhere, or a long journey, or painting a commission. Things just take longer. Things will turn up that are unexpected, and you need to plan in for that a little bit. And it's one of the areas that I still fall down on now, because it is very hard, especially in the modern age with new miniatures, to predict how long it's going to take to build and paint them. Some of those things are just unavoidable. If you can build some contingency and do that, making sure you have clear communication with your client so they know what's going on and why there's a delay, if there is a delay, and just be open and honest at the beginning of how long something might take. Don't make promises that you can't deliver. Something that has significantly changed over the 10 years that I've been doing this is the amount of time it takes to assemble a miniature, especially if that is a Citadel miniature. When I started, you could assemble 10 Marines by lining up all the legs, all the bodies, all the arms, cleaning them up and slapping them together. Now it's very hard not to follow all the instructions on a guide and do it bit by bit, and it can get very, very tricky. And very often you're working on things that are brand new, because that's what a client is excited about, and they want you to build and paint these miniatures. They might not be miniatures that you've worked on before, so you don't know how long it's going to take. One of the things I've developed over the years is charging separately for painting and assembly, and encouraging the clients to assemble themselves where they're able to, because it's just a terrible job. It takes ages, and I personally still don't charge enough for assembly, because sometimes it can even take longer to assemble some miniatures than it does to paint them these days. And it is tricky because people just don't want to pay too much for the assembly. So be aware of that. Assembly now is a real bitch, and try and factor that into your costs. Let's get to the elephant in the room, and that's money. I'm not going to tell you how much I earn from doing this, but you've got to get your pricing right and it works for you. And I'm aware that I have an international audience, so me picking prices out isn't necessarily going to help you. But some of the most realistic things that you really should be bearing in mind is you shouldn't be working for less than the minimum wage in your country. It's really not worth it. There is of course some offset that if you are taking too long and you are a lot slower than other people at painting, it is going to be very hard to offer your client a fair price for painting that miniature and still keep it above the minimum wage. But at the same time, I see so many examples of commission painters or newer commission painters online offering prices out to people that are just incredibly low. Not only does it undercut existing people, that's not something I worry about too much, but more importantly, you're underselling yourself as a person if you were thinking of doing it. So do not set prices that you know you wouldn't be able to deliver in terms of an hourly rate. So don't say, I will paint that miniature for you for £5, $5, whatever it happens to be, and then knowing that it's going to take you 2 hours to do it. That's just ridiculous. Just don't do it. You're underselling yourself. You wouldn't treat an employee like that. You wouldn't want any of your friends and family to work for that kind of money. Just if you're doing this as a serious job, don't do it. If you're doing it for a friend at the club and you do a couple of commissions a year for a bit of extra pocket money, that is a slightly different thing. But if you're setting yourself up as a business, make sure that when you price a job, that is based on you delivering that within a set hourly rate. That's something that you can afford to live on. That's really hard to do. You've got to look at a job and work out how many hours it's going to take you to do that. And you will get that wrong at times. I still get that wrong now. There's not an exact science to it. You'll get better at it over time. But you've got to look at those amount of hours, and as a bare minimum, times that by an hourly rate that you find acceptable, which I hope is comfortably above minimum wage. Remember, you're not just paying yourself for that hour, you're paying for your lighting, because most people will be working at home if you're doing this. You're paying for your equipment, your new brushes, your paints, and all of the tools and things that you need to do this job. So all of those costs should be going into this as well. And then on top of that, you're charging for your skill and your expertise. And a plumber comes to your house, an electrician comes to your house, their hourly rate isn't just based on them being in your property. It's based on the equipment that they use, but then also their training, their expertise, the stuff that you don't know how to do. It's not just a matter of painting stuff for other people because they don't have time. Hopefully they've chosen you because you offer a certain level of skill or ability or artistry that they want for those miniatures. What other things do you need to consider? You need to be able to consider taking decent quality pictures, not only to advertise your work in the future, but also to share decent quality pictures with your clients, because in most cases you will be a distance from your clients. You'll be sending those miniatures. Occasionally you'll be able to hand them over, but you should be able to send them pictures so that they can approve the work and say they're happy with it before they pay. Should you collect a deposit, ask your clients to pay up front. I'm a little bit mixed on this with what I do. With long-standing regular clients, I don't take any deposits anymore. My biggest fear has always been that someone will book me out for a month or 2 months worth of work a year ahead, and then we come to do that work and then suddenly they don't want to do the job anymore and I'm left without work. And luckily that's only happened to me a couple of times, and I've been able to fill that by bringing other clients' work forward. So that's one of the things that I will do. For the first time I work with a client, I'll ask them to pay a small deposit, because it basically sorts out the serious people from those who are maybe just planning ahead or wish listing of what armies they may want. So basically it gets rid of the time wasters, of which luckily there aren't many. But if you are going to take money from people ahead of time and it is a deposit, you need to make sure that you are able to deliver that or pay that money back. So don't put yourself in an awkward situation where you're asking for a large amount of money up front for work that's not going to happen for a year or so, and then not being able to deliver and them asking for the money back and you don't have it. Occasionally you will see things online when there's a bit of a controversy about a painter who's gone AWOL, and you don't want to have your name besmirched in that way. And then the final section is, what do you do afterwards? The shipping and the packing. Sending miniatures in boxes over large distances, in many cases overseas, I'd say that at least half of my clients are in the US, can be tricky, as you can imagine. It's almost impossible to pack things in a way that you can fully ensure there are no breakages. And over time, the best ways I have discovered of doing it is to use extreme amounts of bubble wrap and really try to reduce the movement within inside a box. Now that all seems pretty obvious, and this is advice will work for those of you who sell stuff on eBay as well. But one of the worst things I think you can do as someone who receives miniatures to paint is individually wrapped miniatures with sellotape round bubble wrap. It's really hard to remove those miniatures from that bubble wrap without breaking the miniatures. You want to make sure that the miniatures are secure but not so tightly wrapped that it's hard to unwrap them without breaking them. So what I tend to do is use an awful lot of bubble wrap but roll them up in a way that they can be unrolled gently, but once they're packed in the box that they're not going to move anywhere. Sometimes using boxes within boxes can help, but essentially what you want is your miniature suspended in a lot of bubble wrap where there won't be pressure to snap any parts, and then they don't move around inside the boxes. And if you can achieve that, in most cases your miniatures will arrive unbroken. The final part around shipping is what companies to use. How do you deal with costs and taxes now and tariffs and all the other headaches? When I first started doing this, that wasn't an issue at all. It was pre-Brexit, and pretty much all the shipping I did was never taxed or tariffed at all. That's obviously got a lot worse in the last few years. There's very little you can do around that. Your client will need to be aware of that as well. If you're sending overseas, I don't pay those tariffs, my clients do. They choose me, and that's part of it. The same with you buy something from Europe at the moment and you're going back to the US, those tariffs are all included in your price. They might be paid for at point of sale as service, but they are paid for at that point. And I don't pay the shipping on anything that goes to the clients. They pay their painting fee plus shipping, and then we talk about that beforehand, what kind of service. And I recommend, if possible, to do it insured, because if a box goes missing and it's a couple of £1,000s worth of work and God knows how many £1,000s worth of miniatures, it can be a very, very awkward conversation unless you have some kind of insurance to cover it. So make sure you don't just take a needless risk. Communicate with your client around that, who's responsible for what and what level, and if they want to go for a cheaper service, make sure that the client knows it's at their own risk. And then the final part is, will it kill your own hobby? A lot of people that work within the wargaming industry find that their own passion for wargaming changes, maybe because their day job doesn't then become their pastime. I've been really lucky with it that it's not affected mine at all. I've never got to the end of a day's painting commission work and then not wanted to go and paint my own miniatures, and I quite often do that. I'll spend a day doing commission work, have some food, get the kids to bed, and I'll come back up here and I'm making videos about the thing, or I'm painting more models for content. I just really enjoy painting. You could sit at my desk all the time. Whether it'll affect you or not, I couldn't possibly tell you. That's down to you as an individual. If you find that it is, and the hobby's more important to you, and our hobby is extremely important in terms of balance for so many things, especially mental health, in an incredibly stressful world at many times. If the hobby side of it is the most important thing to you, then maybe not take a risk of trying to earn some money or do it as part of your job. So do be careful of that, do be mindful of that, but it's very much a personal thing. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found that interesting. Maybe you were interested in behind the scenes a little bit for commission painting. Maybe it's something you're considering doing yourself. Maybe you're looking for a commission painter, and this isn't an advert. I'm actually really well booked up at the moment, so I wouldn't be able to offer you anything for a good few months. But maybe you're thinking of booking a commission painter and you wanted to know what kind of thing to expect. Well, the answer is we're all very different and we have different work practices. This is just the way I work, but it might give you a little bit of insight to some of the things you might expect. But if you have enjoyed the video, drop a comment below, ask me more questions if there's anything you think I haven't covered in the video. Maybe you are thinking about becoming a commission painter yourself and you want some advice on it. I'm always happy to help out where I can. If you are just a regular viewer of the channel, you enjoy the kind of content I make on the channel, and you want to support me a little bit further, please check out the channel's Patreon. There's loads of different tiers on there, including painting, coaching and tuition and things as well. And also check out all the other videos on the channel. It's mostly painting and lots of reviews of topics and loads of Warhammer the Old World and lots of stuff for lots of different game systems. So please do go and check it all out. Also check out the channel sponsor, Counterattack Bases. They make loads of gaming aids and custom dice. But thank you very much for watching. Take care. I'll catch you soon.